This thing is thick, Mrs. Wizard.
It is a girthy car.
It is very, very girthy. This is a wide load here, guys. Very, very wide. Let's take a look at this really sweet Continental. Mrs. Wizard, you are a long ways away from me.
I know, to get this whole entire car in the shot, I feel like I'm in a different time zone.
This is a huge car. It is a 1967 Lincoln Continental. This is the beginning of the era of land yachts. There were long cars in the 60s. They were, medium long. But this is the beginning of the Malays area, or the super land yachts. They're huge. This thing's no exception. As you can see, if I were to put my arms out, it's probably 3 to 4 of me wide, or long, I should say.
It definitely makes your Chevelle look like a baby back there.
Yeah, it looks tiny compared to this thing. And obviously you're not going to get 40 miles per gallon with this thing. Probably 4 in the city and maybe 10 or 15 on the highway. That's it. So there was a day and time when this car was probably only worth $3,000 or $4,000 if it was running decent and looked decent. We're going to be putting more than that into repairs. Almost $5,000 in repairs on this thing. And like I mentioned, in a day and time when it was only worth $3,000 or $4,000, you might rethink the idea of putting that much money into this car. But if you scan around on Facebook Marketplace or Bring a Trailer or any of these places where you guys buy cars, these old classic cars are going 20, 30, 60, 80 grand. So, $5,000 is really not that much to get this thing sorted. It does need some work. The customer just bought it recently. This is their dream car. They've always wanted one and they got their chance to finally buy it. He said, can you please go through it? And you don't need it restored, he said. Just go through it, make sure it's safe, everything works. It did arrive with 0 brakes. Like you push the brake pedal and nothing. So we're going to check it over today and see how quickly we can tally up the $5,000 and why it doesn't have any brakes. Let's take a look at this thing first though. Like we mentioned a minute ago, Mrs. Wizard, this thing is wide. If you look down kind of like at the bottom, there's the tires and things. There's a lot of cars in the 60s that were wide, but the track, the wheel track or the wheel width was not very wide. But this one is different. The wheels are as wide as the car and it makes it look even that much wider. We've done a few cars before, Mrs. Wizard, where it was literally a few steps to get around them. It's not going to be the case here.
No, but I find it interesting how delicate the brake lights are.
Yeah, there's those and then there's some down here in the bumper. Very elegant. I really like this car. You like the color too, Mrs. Wizard.
It is my favorite.
It's like a baby blue.
I would say so.
Yeah. The hubcaps are off because it's being worked on. I'll show you guys what one of them looks like. Looks like a dog dish. And these have the really sweet gangster, 1930s gangster suicide doors on them. Watch this, guys. It is kind of dirty in there, and Mrs. Wizard will give you a tour here in a minute. But look at that pillar in the middle. It's like a couple feet tall and it catches both doors. It wasn't too many more years after this that Lincoln quit doing this. So this is towards the end of the suicide door era. So far, no major rust or dents. It is dirty because he just bought it. I mentioned a minute ago that this is an elegant car and the front end is no exception. It looks very, very regal, very elegant. It's beautiful. You see this in your rearview mirror and you just go, wow, that is sweet. Do you remember the old days? Some of you were alive or kids during these days. You remember seeing these cars on the road. And it's kind of like a trip down memory lane. You look in your rearview mirror and you're like, I remember those cars. Those are amazing. And it is a very cool car. And as we go down this side, again, nothing damaged, nothing rusted. Here is the gas cap back here, which you will be opening very frequently on this car because it's going to go through the gas like no tomorrow. There's the convertible top. It is in good shape, and yes, it does work. It works very well. We'll demonstrate that here in a little bit. So we arrived at the other corner of the car. Everything looks really good. Most of these are rotted out by now. This one is really nice. Let's take a look in the engine bay. Another interesting thing is the hood on these opens just like the old Lincolns and also like Jags. It opens backwards, guys. This is a 462 V8, Lincoln V8. That's a lot of cubic inches, and just like I mentioned a minute ago, it is going to drink the gas like a fish. But that's not the point of this car. The point of this car is not to get the best miles per gallon that you can get. It's meant to ride in absolute luxury. It looks very clean in here. Everything looks really good. Like, you guys know I like things stock. I don't want to open the hood and see an AutoZone AFE air filter on it or something really crazy. This is really nice. This is a nice surprise. Everything is where it should be, just like it should be. I do see that the windshield wiper bag, and yes, back in the day they had a bag for your windshield wiper fluid, is melted. So we might let the customer know that, but that's unfortunate. It's probably from the heat of the exhaust manifold right there. One interesting feature about the engines of these Lincolns is that they don't sit all the way against the firewall like most cars. There's quite a distance between the back of the engine and the firewall, and they run the HVAC behind it. So, kind of an interesting setup. Everything looks pretty clean under here. It looks good. There are some issues though that I've been made aware of, and we'll take a look underneath when we raise it up. Let's let Mrs. Wizard give you guys a tour of the interior.
Okay, ladies and gents. As we start, as always, in the dash, you'll see that it says 90,219 miles. And you can tell, even though this is a little bit dirty, a little dusty, needs a good vacuuming, but obviously he's got other concerns like brakes to worry about getting the dirt and debris out. So let's take a look past that as we take our look around. As we look up at the dash, it is in perfect shape. You can tell she has been a garage princess her whole entire life. As we move down, lots of black plastic in here, and obviously we're missing the glove box tray, but obviously that's something simple and easy to get repaired. Obviously you can see lots of controls tucked away back into there. As we move to our door cards, that is a heck of a little shelf there. As you can see, those are window controls. This has electric windows. Yes, there are two. One for the main window and one for the triangle window. Has a fun 2-finger pull on opening the door, and does have an ashtray with cigarette lighter in that little door. As we move to the seat tail, look about this condition. It does feel like a sofa, a nice leather sofa. It does have a little bit of cracking in it, but again, no tears, no marks, just meant somebody sat in it. So amazing shape there. Let's check the back seat. And here in the back seat, other than a few leaves and debris and a few little items that need to get installed and taken care of, the leather's in great condition, needs some conditioning, but nothing major. Has stock seat belts, and as we move up, you can see that the headliner, which I guess in this case is our convertible top, is in really good shape. Has a few issues that may need some addressing, but nothing like major tears, rips, or cracks. So as we move on around, looking good. The visors are in amazing shape. They go up and down and hold. And hold. So many times they become like all flappy to where they just fall down and block your vision. So good shape there. As we look here at the driver's door card, we'll see that it has a nice sturdy handle to close the door. Has our door release, and again has electric window controls. And yes, there are 6 controls there. The triangle window, the main window for the driver, the back seat, and then the passenger as well. So yeah, a lot of window controls there. As you noticed a second ago, I didn't talk about our HVAC system and our radio because they're not in the center. They're all controlled here by the driver. And you can see just simple button designs, and they're the same on the HVAC system as it is over there on the radio. Simple turns as well, so we can adjust our lights, our fan, our volume, and our tuner on this side. We can put our antenna up and down as well. And notice that it does on this side, it does say AC. So even with the age of the car, we do have some nice creature comforts that will make this big bad boy more comfortable driving down the road in the summer. But I'm not sure if you do the AC too much if you got the top down. Anyway, as we slide back, we'll see that the steering wheel is leather wrapped. Obviously, we don't know what it looks like underneath, and we're not taking it off because it's not our car. Lovely Lincoln's in the center, and we have very delicate, I'm not going to push because I don't want to blur out the guys in the shop, but there we go. You can see it's moving a little bit. That's where our horn is on both sides. So, looking really good, and this is a really big steering wheel, by the way. Enough of this interior talk. Let's get this top down.
One interesting thing about this car, actually there's many interesting things. We keep finding a lot of interesting things. Another one is that this trunk is huge, but it's not a trunk. Whoever bought this car obviously has so much money they don't need a trunk. They don't even care about the trunk because there's no way to open it. I did some research on this. I've actually not seen one of these as a convertible top. I was like, how do you open the trunk? And I did some research and several different forums said, you don't. It is not used for storage other than the convertible top. So as you look around here, there's no keyhole, there's no button, nothing. In fact, it opens backwards. It does not lift up like you think a normal trunk. So I'll get the convertible top operating and we'll take a look inside. So I'll start the engine up. Here's our switch here to operate the top. Started right out, smooth. Give it a few seconds to do its thing. So as we can see, there is a spare tire down there, but you don't really store anything back here, especially if you're going to be using the convertible top, because anything that you put back here is about to get crushed. Let's take a look. That was quite a feat of engineering, Mrs. Wizard.
It was pretty crazy.
For 1967, that's amazing. There are SL500s that are less complicated than that. It is really, really cool. A lot of times you see these classic cars in parades and they'll have the parade princess or whatever you want to call it sitting right here. So it's got a nice top to sit on right here, a nice flat area where our convertible top was located. So as you see, it works very well. It works perfectly. That's not going to be a system that we need to address on this car, but it was pretty amazing to watch it work. It was really cool. Again, if you had groceries in the back, they would have just been smashed. You'd have eggs, milk, bread, everything smashed all in there. I suppose if you were to just lift it up real quick and throw something in there and close it back down, but my luck is I would forget it's there and I would drop the top and crush everything, wouldn't I, Mrs. Wizard?
Oh, you definitely would, dear.
So, really, you don't use the trunk for storage other than the convertible top. Let's get this thing up in the air. It's a good thing these bin pack lifts, the 4-post lifts, are rated for 9,000 pounds because this thing is so heavy. Let's go ahead and take a look. I don't see any coolant or anything leaking right here on this header. It looks as though someone has put some sort of coating or something here, like a spray, which is good to keep the rust down. It does have disc brakes in the front. If you go too much further back, just a few years, most cars had drum brakes all the way around. We do have a little seepage there going on from, it looks like the oil pan. We'll let the customer know about that. But really, that's not that bad. Just a little seepage. Keep in mind, guys, this thing has no brakes, so we need to kind of discover why. The brakes up here are about 80%, so they're still good. One thing I do see is the steering gearbox is leaking pretty heavily. We're going to get that on the quote. A lot of people think you can just replace the seals on those and be good to go, but they don't ever account for the fact that you have to pay the shop labor hour by hour to do the work. And by the time we do that, we arrive at the same price as just replacing the gearbox. So we usually just replace the gearboxes. Some of this oil, Magic Mike has actually looked this over. He says that it's actually the valve cover gaskets are leaking. So we'll get that on the bill as well, or on the estimate, I should say.
Does it have green guts to it, Wizard?
That is antifreeze. As we can see, that freeze plug right there is leaking, and it looks like it was installed with a flat screwdriver, which is not good. They probably punched a little hole in it. We'll definitely get that on the estimate as well. Freeze plugs. So our valve cover leak is also pouring down and spraying all over the transmission, but the transmission itself is not really leaking too bad. I really don't see anything going on there. On the back of the transmission, there is a very slight output seal leak. We'll let him know about that as well. But he's just really wanting to get this thing safe and get it on the road. Again, he's not looking to restore each and every bolt and everything on this thing. So we'll see what he does. There's a double cardan joint on these lengthy cars. Our coating extends all the way back, which is really good. There's been a lot of cars I've looked at before that you can tell they did in the garage restoration on the bottom. They spray what they can reach and the rest is left alone. But this has been done on a lift. Everything has been coated. Looks like it did a very good job.
So, Wizard, as long as this car is, the drive shaft really isn't that long. It's got some girth.
It's girthy, but the length isn't there. Yeah, you're right. That's because the majority of the length of this car sits forward and to the rear of the wheels. The actual distance between the engine and rear axle is not that great. It overhangs a lot. So here we have what appears to be a Ford 9-inch, a very, very strong rear axle. This thing will last until the 23rd century or something. It'll be around for a long time. It does have air ride suspension. Looks like it's actually holding. Everything looks good. We do have the drum brakes in the back. And Magic Mike tells me that the issue with the brakes is when he hits the brakes, it just completely fills up the drums. The drums' wheel cylinders are leaking really, really bad. You just lose the brakes whenever that happens. We had a few more feet to go, Mrs. Wizard. Everything's nice and coated there. It looks like it has fairly new exhaust on it. Except for a few leaks and a few issues here and there, really not a whole lot wrong with it. Looking pretty decent. This here appears to be an air line. They probably, yeah, there it is. So there's no compressor on board to fill up the air shocks. You manually do it with an air chuck. So just a quick visual inspection. We find several issues and what's going on with it, some things to add to the estimate, but Magic Mike has actually checked this car over from front to back. It's quite the list. It adds up fast, guys. Let me read it to you. So there's a rear brake issue that's causing to have no brakes. Once that's solved, they'll have brakes again. The power steering box replace. It's leaking pretty bad. The labor to repair all that, you have to pull the gearbox out to go through it. It's easier just to replace it. There's a fuel line repair. The valve covers like we saw. Freeze plugs, we're going to go ahead and do all of them. Whoever installed them didn't do a very good job, and if you just replace the one leaking one and say, well, I'll take a gamble on the others. No, we don't do that here. We're not going to gamble on somebody else's work. I can't verify, I can't stand behind other people's work. So the AC system, AC doesn't work. There's going to be a diagnosis with that to go through and see what's going on with that. It is an R12 system. We'll have to discover if we're going to convert it to 134 or what we're going to go with the AC. There's oil change, filter service, adjust the linkage so it can start into park. For some reason it's not starting in park. Clock wiring to get the clock running again. He'd like to have a dash cam installed on this vehicle. Headlight functions, fix the switch and some issues going on there. and also to ensure the soft top works. And it does work. We did see that there was no leaks, no issues going on there. So that's $4,000 really easily right there. And with the AC diagnosis, the headlights, the clock, several other things, it's very easy to add up to $5,000. So the list I just went through is easily $4,000. And once we find out what's going on with the AC compressor, the headlight switch, the clock wiring, it's easily going to reach $5,000. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, 15, 20 years ago, probably more like 15 years ago, it may not have been worth putting $5,000 into this car. But in today's world, it is absolutely worth, it's probably worth $10,000 putting into this car. The value of these things is skyrocketing. So when the customer called and said, I've got this 67 Lincoln Continental, I've got this amount of a budget, and can you work that in? I didn't worry about whether it's worth it on this car. I knew it definitely is worth it. We do work on the older cars here in the shop. No, we do not restore older cars in the shop. You'll have to go to the West Coast to find a restoration shop for that, and you're probably going to spend $50,000. But we do fix a few small items just like the customer had here. I just want it safe, want to make sure it's going to drive okay. We can do that here. But I do vet the older cars. I'm going to ask you to send pictures. I'm going to look at your car and I'm going to say, nah, bro, I ain't doing it. Or yes, I'll take on your car. And the reason is because people don't fully disclose everything about their car, and then the car shows up and it's a Northeast rust bucket. What am I supposed to do with that? So that's why I vet the pictures to make sure it's something that we can help you with. We're not going to disappoint you. We're not going to tell you to get your car back out of the shop. So we'll get some parts ordered, we'll get everything going on this car and get it fixed up and get it back on the road cruising again, just like it was in 1967. If you're curious what kind of tools we're going to use to fix this really sweet, long Lincoln Continental, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button because more cars are showing up even as I speak. More videos, guys. Thanks for watching.